to take 16 of Reader Mail Mondays with Vaughn R. Demont. This is the first episode. I'm hoping to make this a weekly thing. Basically, you send in your questions and I'll do my best to answer them. Pretty much it's open season. Anything you want to ask about me or my writing, just nothing spoiler related. That's all I ask. So we're just going to hop right into it. We're going to start with our first letter. She is a reader from Missouri who writes, "Okay, I haven't yet read The Vampire Thread, although it is on my to-be-bought list, but I still have a question about it. You've probably heard this one many times, but why Fred? Don't get me wrong, it's a relief to see a vampire not named Lucian, named after some implement of destruction, such as blade or talon, or named after an animal. Still, I've often been wondering about the name. Did you pick the name Fred because of its sheer ordinariness, if that's even a word?" I'd like to start off by saying I have no idea if ordinariness is a word. I didn't make it that far in my spelling bees. The reason I chose Fred is when I was first starting out and trying to write books like this, a author named Michael Black, he suggested that I attempt to write a story in this genre. And I kind of joked that when you're writing gay fiction, more often than not, you have to write a vampire story at some point. So I figured if I was going to write this, I would have to go with almost like an anti-vampire. I wanted to go completely against the stereotype. And the stereotype is, of course, that they're usually very rich, have an incredibly exotic name, and just a wealth of sexual experience. So as a result, I made someone who was initially a virgin, very poor, a lot of student loan debt, and his job was that he worked data entry, punching in mortgage data into a computer, which is actually a job that I myself have had to work, so I can kind of empathize with Fred. It's an incredibly boring job. And when it came down to the name, the first name that popped into my head for as common as I could think of was Fred. Because like I said, it's a common name, but it's one actually you don't see all that often, and certainly nothing you're going to see in vampire fiction. So I started writing a few paragraphs, and it just took off after that, and the novel was eventually written. So yeah, that's why he's named Fred. I was trying to rebel. So we're going to move on to the next question. It's a reader from Kentucky who writes, "I loved the humor in The Vampire Fred." Thank you very much. I love hearing that. "I love the quirkiness. I did get a little bogged down in the history part, but overall I really enjoyed the book and would recommend it. The best part was the wit. Will all of your books be as humorous as The Vampire Fred?" I'll start off by saying I'm a little sorry that a lot of people found the book kind of complicated. One reviewer, I believe, was very accurate when she said it suffers from first book in the series syndrome. I was trying to do a lot in not a lot of space, but rest assured I have learned my lessons from revision, and the second book in the series I believe is going to be much cleaner. In regards to the question, for the most part, a lot of my books tend to be humorous. Not just to stick out, but it's just the way that my characters are. They tend to be very snarky, cynical, sarcastic, sardonic. It's usually the kind of humor that I have, so it usually gets injected into my characters. Chuck, the Incubus, who's probably going to be getting his own Free Fiction Friday story, is definitely an example of my humor, as well as Richard, and Fred definitely is my kind of sense of humor. So, to answer the question, yes, there's probably going to be elements of humor in a lot of my books, usually because a lot of my characters tend to use humor as a defense mechanism. So that's a little piece of trivia for all of you. The last letter, she actually asked multiple questions, which, unfortunately, due to time, I'm not going to be able to get to all of them, but I've chosen a few of them. It is okay to ask multiple questions, but I'll probably be cherry-picking which ones I want to ask. Such, for example, there was a not safe for work question here that I'm definitely not going to be able to get to this week, but I promise I'll get to it eventually. This is a reader from Massachusetts who initially asks, "How did you celebrate selling your first book?" The first book I sold was the Last Paladin series. I sold it in October of 2008, a couple weeks before my birthday in November. My friends from college wanted to celebrate, so they took me to Famous Dave's. It's a barbecue joint. There's a ton of them down south, but there's only a few of them in New York. You actually have to drive all the way to Rochester, which is a hell of a drive. from here, because I'm up near Watertown. But yeah, it was just an amazing night. A lot of great memories. It was probably one of the best birthdays I've ever had. And as a result, I actually got my friends hooked on barbecue as a result. So that's pretty much how I celebrated my first book, was going out for barbecue. What are you working on right now? Unfortunately for the Fred fans, the next project I can tell you is the sequel to the Vampire Fred, but it's not one I'm working on right now. I'm currently about 25,000 words into my next novel, which the working title is called House of Stone. As Fred's story deals with vampires in the city, House of Stone deals with the Fae. I'm really proud of the plot so far. It's turning out much more complicated and much better than I thought it was going to be. Still going to be much easier for the reader to follow along, mostly because the main character tends to break the fourth wall. To answer one of the previous questions, there is quite a bit of humor in it. The beta readers so far have given me great feedback on it, so I'm confident that I'll be able to finish it possibly by the end of September. So hopefully you'll be seeing it from an e-publisher in 2010. And the final question, did you always want to know you wanted to be a writer? Definitely. I've wanted to be a writer since 5th grade. I unfortunately got my start writing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fanfiction, which I'm loath to talk about, but like I said, nothing's out of bounds. That's where I discovered my passion for writing. I would write for hours and hours and hours. It's a time in my life I really remember fondly. Nowadays, I only usually get about 2 or 3 hours in, if I'm lucky, to write, but I've always wanted to be a writer, and I hope it's what I get to do for the rest of my life. So, as far as questions go, that's all we have time for this week. If you have any more, you can always check out my blog. It's Vaughn R. Demont at LiveJournal. If you'd like to email me any questions for Reader Mail Mondays, possibly for next week or future episodes, just email me at vaughndemont, that's all one word, at yahoo.com. I hope that you'll drop by my blog this coming Friday. I'm going to be having part 9 of Dead in the Water for Free Fiction Fridays. Also, make sure to check out ID Locke's blog, as she's working on Free Fiction Friday as well. I'm trying to recruit a couple of other authors, so hopefully we'll see some more this week. If you'd like to buy any of my books, please go to torquerepress.com. That's where you can find all of my ebooks that are currently out. And I would also like to give thanks to That Guy Media, who did production and editing on this. I'm very grateful for what they were able to do for me. And so hopefully I will see you next week. And I'll see you all next week.